In 2020, Orbea released the massively popular Rise, a super lightweight electric mountain bike. And for 2024, it has been completely redesigned into this Generation 2. It's got a ton of features, multiple battery options, and now it's available with the full 85 Newton meters of torque from this Shimano EP801 motor with Orbea's custom RS tune.
Orbea's goal for the next gen Rise was to give it more of pretty much everything. Make it more capable, give it more range, more power, and better handling, whilst keeping it as light as it ever was. The new Rise has been completely overhauled, and it's now available in 2 different travel options, with 2 different battery sizes. Previously, the motor was restricted to 60 Newton meters, so it's a welcome addition having the full 85 Newton meters of torque on tap. So it makes it one of the most powerful super light e-bikes available on the market. Things get even more impressive. The lightweight, stiffer frame houses the Shimano EP801 motor that can also use Shimano's electronic auto shift technology, and it can house either a 420 watt-hour or a 630 watt-hour fixed internal battery. The bike can be built up as a super light but high power, shorter travel bike with 140 front and 140 rear, or spec it with the long travel version to gain 150mm on the rear and 160mm up front. Both frames are the same in terms of the construction, and they've both been beefed up with this crossbar over the previous generation that helps with stiffness and rigidity. The weight of the lightest build is really impressive. Considering this bike has 85 Newton meters of torque and a 420 watt-hour battery, its weight of 16.2 kilos is seriously light. Although for me, I need a more burly build, and with that comes a lot more weight. The bike in the long travel configuration with coil and more burly build spec comes in at 20.1 kilos.
So visually, there's quite a few differences in the frame versus the Gen 1 Rise. Straight away, you can see that we've got this kind of torsion bar along the frame. Now, that adds 22% extra stiffness to the front triangle. And between frame sizes, Orbea have used a different type of layup and different techniques to add additional stiffness to bigger frame sizes. So as you go from a medium to a large, the jump in stiffness is around 7%. And then again, if you go from a large to an extra large. So inherently, people that are riding bigger bikes are going to be taller and probably heavier. The rear triangle has also been really beefed up. It is now 14% stiffer. It's got wider cross section. You can see versus the older rear triangle that it's physically beefier, and it's just like a more broad cross section of carbon. So the entire frame is overall stiffer. And because now really we've got a more capable bike, this is almost enduro spec, 160, 150, heavy trail or light enduro. That extra stiffness is really welcome. Now there's a couple of cool features that I really like about the frame as well. I'm going to show you the dropper because this is completely slammed. This is the new Fox transfer dropper post. And you can't usually slam big droppers on e-bikes because the motor itself gets in the way. Sometimes suspension linkage, kinks in the seat tube really prevent that being dropped all the way. But this is the first dropper post on an e-bike that I've been able to completely slam with this length of drop. This is a 240mm dropper, and you can completely slam it on this XL, and even down to the size medium, you can completely slam long droppers in. And that seat being completely out of the way just makes a massive difference on steep and techie sections. You don't have to worry about the seat kind of touching the inside of your leg or wherever, and it makes a real big difference. So it's good to see that all these little bits of detail, all this attention to detail has been really taken care of. Little bits like frame protection comes pre-installed underneath here, on the seat stay, on the chain stay, and on the back of the seat tube from the factory. It's got internal cable routing, which I know divides opinion, but they're using enduro bearings, which they say are going to give the most bearing life possible. So bearing changes shouldn't be that frequent on a bike like this.
I spent 2 days in Spain testing the bike and then more time back home on my trails in the UK. This gave me a good understanding of how the bike performed. I'll get to the climbing performance later on, but on the techie trails, the bike is in a different class compared to the outgoing Rise. It is so much more capable on the technical stuff. It's got a 64-degree head angle in the low setting, and it's way more aggressive trail focused right out of the box. The bike is still full 29er, and there's no official option for a mixed wheel setup. I did find the front of the bike felt quite low, which meant on the steep stuff it felt a little bit sketchy. I'd totally need a 50mm Rise bar out the front to deal with the fairly low stack height. Pedalling performance from the motor with Orbea's custom firmware is good. It's responsive and quite natural feeling. There's not much motor overrun, which I do miss compared to some other motors. That overrun can help when climbing and clearing obstacles, and I hope Shimano can add this as an update at some point in the future. I found the rear suspension tune excellent when paired with the coil. I tried the air, but I definitely preferred the coil. The rear suspension design felt progressive enough for using the coil, and I tried a 475-pound spring, which worked really well with my 85-kilo ride weight.
So we've got an option of having two different sized batteries. The lower 420 watt-hour battery pack, or what I've got in here is the 630 watt-hour battery. Now what's really interesting with this is that Orbea have managed to use the latest generation of cells. They're 5.8 amp hours in capacity, and they are the most energy dense cell on the market. It is the latest technology that is available. What that means is that this 630 watt-hour battery weighs under 3 kilos. In fact, considerably under. It's 2.88 kilos, which means that this battery pack here has an energy density of 218 watt hours per kilo. That means that this is the lightest and biggest capacity battery that you could possibly fit in this frame size right now. And just look how slim it is. 630 watt-hour battery, 2.88 kilos. It's remarkable that they've managed to fit that in this slimline, lightweight frame. Not only that, if you want more range, you can also get a range extender that is 210 watt hours. So the range extender has been completely redesigned to fit in with this new battery architecture on the new Gen 2 Rise, which means with the 630 that's in the bike already and a 210, you've got 840 watt hours of battery capacity, which is pretty colossal. I don't think I've ever used that amount of battery in one go. Although I have noticed a couple of things on this that are worth mentioning. Number one, when you plug it in, it won't combine the batteries. It just uses this exclusively for its source of energy. And you don't get up to the full power from the motor. It's almost around 80% of the maximum motor power. And the way I've been using this is to put it on at the beginning of the ride, run the bike in turbo, just use this to get as much boost as you can, and then when it's nearly empty, pop it in the car, hide it in a bush. You can easily hide this anywhere, and then you've got the full power internal battery capacity that you use it. It's a shame that it all can't be ridden in parallel and use the entire system together, but the cell architecture in here is different to the internal batteries. That's why you've not got the full range of power from this range extender alone. So I like how clean the front of the bike is, and also you can spec it with a display when you buy it, but I like having it on my Garmin. So on here it shows me the mode that I'm in, the battery level, and an estimated range that I've got left, and also the cadence that the bike's doing. I don't find the remote the most ergonomic. It's a little bit kind of plasticky feeling, and the buttons aren't extremely defined. It's not a huge struggle to change mode at all, but I do find that that could be a little bit more ergonomic with perhaps slightly bigger buttons on there. Being quite picky, but I think that could be a little bit better. But the rest of the bike is so clean out the front. You can just see couple of cables. Yes, there is internal headset routing. I know not everyone's the biggest fan of headset cable routing, but in my experience, both building and maintaining bikes, they're a little bit of a struggle. They are a little bit annoying, but it does make the front really clean. You can change the stem to your own stem. You just need to get a little adapter direct from Orbea. But on the whole, out the front, it's a very, very clean looking bike. The aesthetics are really visually pleasing, as is the rest of the bike, to be honest with you. I can't fault the levels of detail and the overall look of the frame. There's some really neat little features that just show the attention to detail that Orbea have added to the frame. I'll just show you a couple of neat little bits. There's the little multi-tool that's just stashed down here in the suspension linkage. And it's got some essentials, four little multi-tools on there that you will no doubt need on your ride at some point. It's magnetized, so just pops in there and it's super easy and quick to pull out. Neat little touch. And the other thing I like is it's got a flip chip on here. So like many bikes, you can change the head angle, you can change your bottom bracket height slightly. But on the rear axle, there's a hex key that allows you to change this. And check this out, I've never seen a flip chip this easy. You don't even have to take it out. All you do is use that hex key and loosen it up, and you can actually change the angle just by raising or lowering weight on the bike, and that will put it into the high position, the stock position, or I can put it into the low position. It slackens the head angle, lowers the bottom bracket. I'll just nip that up, now it's in the low position, and it's slackened it a little bit, like half a degree, lowered the bottom bracket by a few millimeters. So as I'm climbing up to the top, I've reached the top of the trail, I've got a big long descent. I might want the bike a little bit more stable out the front, a little bit lower BB for a bit more stability. And that is the quickest flip chip that I've ever done by far. Really, really neat. So there's two power profiles that come installed on the bike. Number one is like the regular tune that gives you a bit more limited output from the motor. And number two unlocks all 85 Newton meters from this EP801 motor. And on the super lights, normally it's very difficult to get the bike started on super steep stuff, but having the full 85 Newton meters makes a big difference. Like this is me putting a little bit of pressure on the pedals, but it's very eager to get going, and very low RPM on my part, but loads of power being output from the motor. So on steep stuff, it's much easier to start. It's very, very nice having that full output from the motor. I say full output from the motor because it doesn't quite give you the full watts from the motor. Although it gives you the full 85 Newton meters, the Rise Gen 2 still limits the full watt output. So stock, this motor will give 600 watts. It gives around 500 watts. So it's not the absolute peak power output you get from it, but the rotational force, the Newton meters, is the full output. And the reason they do that is to protect the battery experience, the ride experience, and for you to get as much mileage and the longest rides out of this possible. So full 85 Newton meters of torque, but slightly limited on the top end power. It's barely noticeable, and I think you'd have to do a back-to-back with another full power Shimano motor to realize you're not getting that full 600 watts. And it's probably only in certain situations that you would actually notice that, because from starting down low, 85 Newton meters is so nice to have on tap to get you cranking. Although what I do find is because the chainstay is short, it's 440 mil, which I actually think is too short for me personally climbing. It means I have to get my weight really far forward over the front to stop it lifting. It does want to lift quite easily. And the other thing that the short chainstay means is I have to really focus on getting my rider weight forward on flat corners. And in fact, most of my riding, I'm conscious about my weight balance. Personally, I would prefer to have a longer rear center, a longer chainstay, because as bikes grow out the front, sometimes if they don't grow out the back, they feel a little bit more unbalanced. On the flip side, it's very, very playful, very active and easy to move the back end around, which a lot of riders really enjoy. Lots of people prefer shorter chainstays. So it does come down to a personal preference, but I do find that the shorter chainstay compromises the climbing ability somewhat. I am 6'3", 191 centimeters, so I do notice it because I ride the XL bikes. So a medium and a large and probably a small will be more balanced. Couple of remarks on descending. There is a little bit of clatter, rattle still from the Shimano motor. It's not completely silent. It's inherent in most of the motors that are out on the market at the moment, but it is something that I can notice. And also on full power, when you've got it in boost mode, it does sound a little bit louder than I remember the previous Gen Rise. Doesn't bother me too much, although I do notice it when I go on other bikes that don't have it. I do love how peaceful that is. But you can notice it on here. You do get used to it quite quickly as well. I've got to say the bike feels like a very capable trail bike, like really bordering on enduro. I've set it up as kind of burly as I can with downhill tyres front and rear, a coil 160 at the front, 150 at the rear. The Fox 36 has the new Grip X damper in it. And honestly, if this was my bike, I would be very, very tempted to put in a 170 fork and a 38. You can actually put in a 170. I checked with Orbea, but it's not something they're advertising or selling. But I find the front a little bit twitchy when it starts to get a little bit chunkier. There's a couple of instances where I just wished for a little bit more of a stiffer, bigger fork out the front. So I reckon a 38 170 on here would be awesome. Although the rear is stiffer, there's a little bit of flex still out the rear. Now I am talking when you really push it and probably taking this bike out of its intended scope of what it's designed for. But for most things like trail riding, aggressive trail riding, this is a very competent, very capable, very customizable, pretty much full power trail bike that is under 20 kilos. It ticks many, many boxes, and a lot of people will be massively happy riding a bike like this.
So Orbea has succeeded. The new Rise is better in every way. It's more powerful, more capable, has more range, and is massively customizable. And it really does set a technical benchmark for the lightweight segment.